So this is lesson 4.4, multi-step inequalities. Honestly, for this lesson, I'm just going to do a couple of problems. I've taught you everything that you need to know to be successful at this lesson. It's just kind of putting it all together. So if you think back to chapter 3, when we were working with multi-step equations, we know that we had to simplify both sides. Then we worked with our addition, subtraction, and then our multiplication, division on the variable side. The only thing that's a little bit different with inequalities is the thing that we learned in 4.3, and that's when we are multiplying or dividing by a negative number, it flips the sign. So that is the only difference between inequalities and equations. So I'm just going to go ahead and solve a couple of problems. If it gets to a point where you think you know what you're doing, just pause the video and try out the problem on your own, and then double check with me once you are done to see if you got the same answer I did. So on your paper, you should always be copying down the original problem, because that's going to help you see and understand things a lot better. So the first thing I'm checking for is I'm making sure that it's simplified. So on the left side and on the right side, it is simplified because there's nothing else I can do. Because these two are unlike terms. This one has a v, this one doesn't have a variable at all. And I'm looking at the left and the right side. Both those sides are simplified. So I'm done with simplifying. Now I need to move on to my addition subtraction, and that's on my variable side. So I know that I'm either going to have to move my 2 or move my 1. One of these numbers is being added or subtracted. The other one's being multiplied or divided. And I think the easier one to see is the multiplication or division, because it's the one that's directly next to or underneath our v, or our variable. So this one is being multiplied because it doesn't have a sign between the 2 and the v. See how there's no sign? That automatically tells me that it's multiplication. So that means that this one is our addition, subtraction, and in this case, it's being added by that plus sign. So we're adding a positive 1. I need to do the opposite to kind of undo that. So I'm going to add a negative 1. Because a positive 1 and a negative 1 equals 0. And 2v plus 0 is just 2v. Since I'm doing addition, I know that my inequality symbol stays because it only flips if it's multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So since there is addition happening here, it's not multiplication or division, so it definitely does not flip. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to add a negative 1 over here. 9 plus negative 1 gives me 8. Now I'm done with this first step, adding or subtracting. I need to move on to multiplying or dividing. So we said before that this is multiplication, so that means I'm going to be doing division on both sides. The number I want to get rid of is that 2. So when I divide by 2, it makes that go away and leaves me with just my v, which is what I want. I'm going to ask myself, am I multiplying or dividing? Answer is yes. But is it by a negative number? And the answer is no. It's by a positive 2. So since I said no, the inequality stays the same. Now I have 8 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And that's going to be my final answer. So let's go ahead and enter that into IXL. V is less than 4. And we got it correct. Let's try another. So I'm going to erase everything. And then I'm going to rewrite my problem. So my problem is 4t plus 2 is less than 10. So just like an equation, I'm going to draw my line and circle my variable. I know that both sides are simplified. So after simplifying, I'm going to add or subtract my numbers. So I know that I need to move the 4 and the 2 because those two numbers are on my variable side. I can see right away that that 4 is being multiplied by the t because it's right next to it, which means this 2 is being added. To get rid of that, add a positive 2, I need to add a negative 2. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do to the other. A positive 2 and a negative 2 put together makes that go away and leaves me with just my 4t. I was adding here. I only flip the sign if it's multiplication or division by a negative number. So that's not multiplication or division, so I don't flip my sign. And then 10 plus negative 2 is going to give me a positive 8. Now I'm going to move on to step 3, which is my multiplication or division. I see that multiplication division right here. So since it is multiplying, that means that I'm going to do division. And I want to get rid of my positive 4. So that's the number that I'm going to put underneath. That makes that go away and leaves me with my variable t. I'm going to ask myself, am I multiplying or dividing? Answer is yes. But is it by a negative number? And the answer is no. So since we answered no, it does not flip that inequality. Now I'm going to do 8 divided by 4, which is 2. And then that's my final answer. So let's go ahead and enter that. T is less than 2. And we got it correct. So I'm going to skip a little bit just so we can get into a little bit of harder problems. So I'm jumping to my next level. So eventually you're going to see problems like this, where it says f divided by 6 minus 1 is greater than or equal to negative 2. So just like before, we're drawing our line, we're circling our variable, and I know that both sides are simplified. So I'm going to look at my two numbers that are with my f after I KCO. Got to KCO that. So I've got a 6 and I've got a negative 1. It's easier for me to figure out which one's being multiplied or divided because that is very obviously division. So I see division right here, which this number is being added. So I have to get rid of my addition subtraction first. So I see a plus negative 1. I want to get rid of that. So the opposite of a negative 1 is adding a positive 1. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. A negative 1 and a positive 1 makes that go away. And then we're left with f divided by 6. Since I didn't do any multiplication division, I know my inequality stays. And negative 2 plus 1 is going to give me a negative 1. Now I'm moving on to my last step, multiplication or division. I'm seeing division there, so that means that we're doing multiplication. I want to get rid of the 6, so that's the number I'm going to multiply by. When I multiply, that makes that go away and leaves me with just my f. And then negative 1 times 6 is just a negative 6. I'm going to ask myself, did I multiply or divide? Answer is yes. But did I multiply or divide by a negative number? So I'm just looking at that 6. I don't care about that 1. Since that 6 is positive, that means the sign stays. And that should be our answer. So let's double check it. F is greater than or equal to negative 6. And we got it correct. Let's erase all of this. And then I want to jump to a problem like this. So you might run into one of these types of problems as well. We have 3 plus negative 74. B is greater than 77. So these are big numbers. But that doesn't matter because we've got a calculator, or we could just use our brain because we are smart. So we're going to draw our line. We're going to circle our variable. And then I'm looking at the left and not the right. I see that both of those are simplified. So that means that I'm going to be moving on to my addition subtraction. So I'm looking at my variable side. I see my two numbers. I know one of these is being added or subtracted, and the other one's going to be multiplied or divided. Again, it's easier to see the multiplication or division because that's the one that's right next to the b, or the variable. So this is our multiplication, which leaves this for our addition. So I have to get rid of this 3 first. I see that it's a positive 3, so I want to do the opposite, which is a negative 3. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. Negative 3 over here. This makes that go away, and we're left with a negative 74b. I didn't do any multiplication or division, so that means my inequality symbol stays. And now I'm taking 77 plus negative 3. So that means that it's going down by 3, which is going to give us a positive 74. Now I have to get rid of my multiplication. In order to get rid of the multiplication, I have to do division. So I'm dividing on both sides. And I want to get rid of that negative 74. So that's what I'm writing underneath. I know that makes that go away and leaves us with just our b. I'm going to ask myself, did we multiply or divide by a negative number? In this case, yes, we did. That denominator that we divided by is a negative number, which means we flip our sign. And then 74 divided by 74 is 1. Positive divided by a negative is a negative. And so that's going to be our answer. So let's go ahead and type that. B is less than negative 1. And we got it correct. So if you have any questions over these problems, just send me an email. I'd be happy to help you. Feel free to rewatch any of these problems. I'm sure if you go back to the first problem and pause it before I start explaining, you're going to figure out what the answer is anyways. So you can go and try more problems doing that.